right, good morning, everyone. Chair Haxon is having difficulty getting logged into the Zoom account. So as Vice Chair, I'll begin the meeting. I know that she had some words that she wanted to express at the very beginning of this meeting with respect to recent events, and I don't have those words with me. So I would ask everyone to indulge her when she does get logged in, and we'll go ahead. She can go ahead with those thoughts that she had. So this is the York Regional Police Services Board meeting for June. The roll call shows that everyone is here with the exception of the chair, who we are awaiting. So in the beginning, I will ask, are there any disclosures of interest by any members of the board? Seeing none, I will proceed. If you do discover you have an interest at somewhere during the meeting, please advise and we'll take that into account. There are the confirmation of the minutes from June 20th of May 20th. Are there any errors or omissions? Can I have a mover and a seconder? Chair Emerson and Josh Cooper is seconder. All those in favor? Approved. That's carried. There are no presentations today. However, we do have some deputations. We're happy to have those folks here with us this morning. Mafalda, just refresh me on the rules of deputations and how the chair had decided to handle this in terms of timing and so on.
In accordance with our procedural bylaw, deputants have about 5 minutes to speak. However, it is up to the chair to allow additional time if required. And the chair has indicated that she is certainly open and happy to provide additional time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mafalda. I would ask then that the deputants, as they come forward and make their presentations, just advise us of the time they may require. I believe the bylaw says that there is five minutes allowed. However, we can extend that, and in past we have extended that up to 10 minutes. So we will begin with the first deputant. Jeanette Martin, representing the Vaughan African Canadian Association. Good morning. It's nice to see you, and you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I'm trying to just get my speaker view so I can see everybody that's on the call. So good morning to everybody on the call, as well as the other deputants that are here this morning. And also to the YRP boardroom, I see you guys. Good morning to all the officers as well. Good morning. Nice to see you guys. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak this morning during your meeting. I don't have an exact time of how long this is, my deputation, not more than 10 minutes, maybe about 8. So please bear with me. So the deputation is made in the spirit of what's been happening recently in the Black community. And so as the executive director for the Vaughan African Canadian Association, what I'm sharing with you this morning is what I'm sharing from the heart of our community. So thank you so much. So my name is Jeanette Martin. I'm the executive director. And I want to begin by stating that we know the former chief of police, Eric Jolliffe, has recently retired, and we wanted to wish him well. And we look forward to hopefully celebrating his illustrious career in September, if the opportunity to do so is cleared by public health. We also want to congratulate the new chief, Jim McSween, on his new role. As you guys know, the York Region community is a very diverse community. And we look forward to doing our part in supporting Chief McSween as he leads this region into the future of YRP. I understand that there are some new appointees on this board So for the new appointees, hello to you. And those that are not familiar with the Black community and policing, I hope that you'll gain a better understanding through my deputation of who we are and what our issues are as it pertains to policing. And for those of you that are on the board that have been there for many years, you have seen the demographics in York Region change over time. And of course, with that change comes challenges. And some of those I will outline this morning in my deputation. I want to begin by saying that the Black community is in pain. The recent murder of George Floyd and incessant anti-Black racism ravaging both sides of the border is unleashing trauma on our community that seems unrelenting. The murder of George Floyd has torn through the heart of the Black community and across the globe in every country. It has seared through the heart of Black men and children and has pierced the womb of every Black woman who heard the cries of George Floyd as he cried out for his mother. So we are hurting, and we have a right to be hurting and a right to express that however we see fit. I watched the video by the chief that was online speaking about the pain we are feeling, and we definitely appreciate that. And I don't know if the Police Services Board has actually issued their own statements, but if so, thank you if you have done so. If not, I would encourage you to do so. Local leaders are calling for an end to policing in schools. That is what we're hearing from our community. They also want to review the manuals that are used in schools in partnership with the YRDRSB and the YCDSB. This policy manual sets the guidelines and rules of how our children are treated, arrested, or detained while attending school. This manual needs to be revisited and rewritten from an anti-oppression and anti-Black racism lens. We are fortunate in this region to have a police service that was led by two leaders who understood the fundamental value of diversity and the importance of community partnerships. Both chiefs had an open door policy with community and practiced what they preached. It is because of their commitment to have a strong diversity unit with officers who worked with community and represented communities, as well as the creation of the safety village to teach students and families. They also spearheaded the building of the Human Rights Teaching Hub, a first in policing. All of these initiatives are fantastic, but it can't stop there. Even the staffing needs to reflect people of color. Here's what we know about the Black community in York Region, taken from the Black Experience Project. The #1 challenge of the Black community in York Region is a lack of support from government. Systems and institutions need to be governed by policies that hold them accountable. These policies are guideposts used to create parameters for behavior, treatment, and consequences. We need to know that policing has guideposts that protect people. Institutional settings can influence how the Black community feels and whether we feel included. When we enter public spaces, we feel the presence of unconscious bias. We are faced head on with white privilege in every room we enter. And the subtle and overt forms of anti-Black racism is something we navigate daily. The Black community can provide direction in addressing inequities and systemic bias. The York Region organizations include many professionals who are experienced in this work and can help develop, train, and implement initiatives to combat racism and bias, so that we can create positive work environments and culturally appropriate programs. It is imperative that YRP hires consultants and companies that look like me. The times that I've been to YRP to receive training on human rights and equity, and also anti-racism work, the trainer did not look like me. It behooves me to think that if I was going to get anti-Semitic training, that somebody would be from another culture, another group, or another faith teaching me what they think I should know. It behooves me that the city or the YRP or any other system of government does not use a community in which they are trying to help to do that training. So that needs to be an imperative. We also need to ensure that we use data to understand the needs of the community. With data and action-based research, including race-based theory and asset-based methodology, the YRP can get a full grasp and understanding of different aspects of our community. We are all for race-based data. When the pandemic started, it was a lot of people were talking about collecting race-based data. Who are the ones that are suffering from this pandemic and COVID-19? Who are the people that are dying more so from this? And there's a lot of pushback in government. They didn't want to collect it, as if it was an insult to our community. Collecting race-based data is the only way we can ensure that we get the programs and services that we need for our community. So we applaud you when you collect race-based data, because when we say it, you don't listen. When we say it, nobody believes us when we say it. So do the data, get the numbers, get the statistics, and that will prove what we've been saying for many, many decades. The Black community is 20 times more likely to die at the hands of the police. That is a stark statistic. 20 times more likely than the faces I see on this screen at the hands of police. The velocity of coverage showing Black men and women being killed by police is in a constant loop. It is ingrained and etched in our minds. We see it 24/7 on TV. It is traumatizing. Yesterday on Global News, we saw 2 Black women trying to jog in a city of Toronto park with a bylaw officer telling them if they fled, he would shoot them. That was on Global TV and CB24 yesterday and today, this morning. Those 2 women that were next to 2 white children questioned the bylaw officer and said, "Why are you threatening our lives? Why are you stopping me, asking me for my driver's license, my ID, and you're not stopping them?" This is in our city. So anybody that tells you this doesn't exist in Toronto or Canada, it exists, it exists. So not only is this man questioning her and asking her for her ID, he's telling her, if you run, I will shoot you. We can't even jog in a park without being threatened. This is on loop 24 hours a day. We ingest this. My children ingest this. My son, who should be driving and enjoying his life, is stuck in my house. I will not allow him to leave my house without me or my husband. That is the life that we live. And the only way it will change is if your systems look like me and Charlene, because you're not going to hear these stories every day. It's not your reality. How do you expect to make changes in your systems if nobody looks like me and Charlene? Who is going to tell you these stories? Your officers need to understand that when you approach us, some of us are going to be nervous. Wouldn't you be nervous? Wouldn't you be nervous if an officer is coming near you? Wouldn't you feel uncomfortable? This is not an individualistic thing. It's not personal. It's what we've seen. It's what we've seen, that when we are approached, we can die. We may not smile when you approach us, because one minute we're on our sofa, in our home, with our doors locked, or we're jogging, walking, sleeping in a car, and the next minute we're dead. Wouldn't you be reluctant to also speak to the police? And the only way to change that isn't by putting somebody else up there to talk to our youth about policing. You need to have somebody like us talk to the youth about policing, because we understand what they're going through. And we don't teach at them, we talk to them. YRP has a lot of good initiatives, and I'm not here just to talk about what we as a community is feeling, although I have all the right to do that. But I'm going to talk about some of the good initiatives that YRP does have, because we do consider ourselves community partners. You have a Black History Month event that is by far the best event for the entire month of February. We put on our Sunday best, we come out and we enjoy that day. We see people and friends we haven't seen in years. We get a chance to speak with the police officers, enjoy a wonderful day, and you guys put work into that Black History Month event. It is one of the best I've ever seen. So congratulations for that. That is amazing. Please keep doing that. You have an amazing event for the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. Again, kudos for even thinking about doing something like that. Something that looks at how we as a community can come together to fight racial discrimination. But we need more officers, again, that are diverse to be a part of that commemoration and other community events, not just the same few. I see a lot of Black female officers during Black History Month, and I never see them again until the next February. Where are they? We need them to be at more events. As a police services board, you right now do not reflect the diversity of this region. With no one on this board that is Black or a person of color, this board is in jeopardy of leading a police force without the lens of inclusion. You are leading a police force without any inputs from someone who looks like me and Charlene. It has been over 6 years since a Black person was appointed to the Police Services Board in York Region. If you plan to lead officers and in leadership during this tumultuous time in our history, when anti-Black racism is rampant and the pain of my community is palpable, you need to have representation. I want to thank you all for your time and for providing me with this platform. As always, the Vaughan African Canadian Association remains a partner and is always here to work with you. We would rather work with you than to be there to be taking out brush fires everywhere and being there to like calm things down when they get out of control. We are here to work with you and to partner with you and to guide you. And yes, we're also here to hold you accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. It is nice to have you as a partner. Are there any questions from any of the members of the board? Chair Emerson?
Thanks, John. Thanks, Ms. Martin, for your presentation, and we're listening. I just have one question for sure. The police in the schools, I stand to be corrected, but I believe we don't go in there unless the school boards ask us to go in there. So if the school boards ask us to be part of the school system, we're trying to help them. So if you're saying to us, I'm sure the chief is listening, you don't want us in the schools, then that's something that we can look at very seriously along with the school boards. But I don't believe that we force ourselves into the schools unless the school boards ask us. And the other thing on the Police Services Board, and I know you know this, is that the province of Ontario appoints 3 members onto our board. Mm-hmm. They took off Robin Dubé, I forget his last name, from Richmond Hill, and he put on Walter Purcell, and then we have Josh Cooper, and we have Jennifer. So the rest of the 4 are 3 members of Regional Council, which is the mayor of Vaughan and the mayor of East Gwillimbury and myself. We appointed John Molyneux, and we're up to another appointment come in the end of this year. John's term is up. So I just want you, I didn't know if you knew who puts people on the Police Services Board, but the province of Ontario has a say in three people on the board, and that is their decision, not mine. So anyways, I'll have to follow up with the chief to see just where the schools is in this. And if you're saying that you don't want us in the schools, then I would suggest that your comment should go directly to the York Region District School Board and the Catholic Board. I can only talk about York Region. I can't talk about other municipalities outside York Region. But I thank you, and I'm really glad that we're partners and working together to find solutions and understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the board? Okay, thank you, Ms. Martin. Very appreciative of your involvement here today. Very, very important subject and one that we are all taking to heart.
Appreciate it.
So the next deputant is Charlene Grant. Charlene, the floor is yours. The same, if you can let me know roughly what timing you expect, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
About 5 to 6 minutes. I don't think I have long. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for having me or giving me this opportunity to speak to you all. I'm here as a parent, and I'm also part of the steering committee of a group called Parents of Black Children. That group came about because of the school board. My son was having a number of facing a number of discrimination at his school, from grade 2 all the way up to high school. We end up taking the board to, just to give you a background as to why I got to this. We end up taking the board to the Human Rights Tribunal, and we won our case against teachers who felt it was okay to treat him like garbage just because he was Black. I bring that up to say to you, one of my first experience with York Region Police was when Eric was the chief. It's around 2016, 2017, when the government was going to be legalizing carding. And Eric had first I believe he had a breakfast where he invited the Black community to come. And I went, my first time meeting a few of the officers anyways. And the next time it was at the headquarters. And I sat there in that room with a lot of the Black community leaders within New York region. And it was my first experience as a mother to 2 Black boys, seeing the police in a different light, other than me being fearful for my children. I sat in that room and listened to the officers present what York Region Police is all about. And I have to tell you, I was impressed. I was blown away. I left that room, that meeting. I mean, the community, the male in the room, based on their experiences and trauma, felt different, and I get it because of what they experience out there on the street. But for me as a mother sitting there and hearing the police talk about when they're hiring, the bias training that goes in, the bias assessment, what we could do as the community if any of the officers violates our rights, was refreshing to hear. Because why? As a mother, I want to be able to tell my children, when you're out there, it is not so scary for you. So I left that room being, without you guys even knowing, champion in York Region. I am telling people the model that you guys have put in place is one that I've never seen and they should follow. I even went back to the Director of Education of York Region and said that and explained that to them. You might want to connect with them to find out how they do it, because they're onto something. Not saying you guys are perfect, but that was a difference. But I was impressed by it. I have lived in Toronto. We drove a Mercedes. We had a couple of them, our family did, to be honest with you. And I can't tell you the amount of time we've been stopped. I remember personally being stopped once. And when the officer came to me and I asked him why I was pulled over. And I could say this to you because as a female, I have a little bit more privilege than my husband, a little bit, where I could ask questions that my husband wouldn't dare to ask because of fear. And when I asked the officer why he pulled me over, he goes, "You're on your phone." I said, "You do realize I'm driving a 2010 Mercedes. This is Bluetooth is standard in this car." He said, "Your hand was at your ear." And I said, "Just doesn't mean my phone was in my hand." Anyways, he left and he gave me a ticket and he left. A few weeks later, I got something in the mail saying my ticket was canceled. I was confused by it because I've never received that before. Because I was ready to go to court and challenge this ticket because I could almost assure that the judge drives a Mercedes like mine, and that could be something that could be proven. The officer, he couldn't in the moment admit he was wrong. He was an older officer, but he canceled the ticket, so I got that in the mail. My husband, in the other hand, got pulled over most recently in York Region, I believe it was last year, and he got a ticket for not showing his insurance. We got a call from our insurance company because I believe it was registered. And when she said to me, you shouldn't have gotten a ticket because normally they give you 24 hours to present your insurance. And I said, I know, that doesn't apply to us. I said, when you're Black, you don't get to get benefit of the doubt when these things happen to you. My husband was so nervous, he didn't even want to dig through the glove compartment to find, because he doesn't get pulled over all the time, I'll be honest with you, to find his insurance. And I said to her, you know, we've never had a lapse in our insurance, but now we have this against us. My family lived in Kleinburg for a number of years. We decided to move just before the pandemic, and we're moving to Woodbridge. The day we were driving in, my two little ones, my 9-year-old and my 15-year-old was with me. We had brought our 18-year-old at the time before, so he's seen the house, but I wanted to be the one to show the little ones the new house. So I had them in the car and I made the joke, just so you know, this is the kind of neighborhood that Black people move into, and they say, there goes the neighborhood. It was a joke. It was me trying to be funny with them in that moment. Later on that night, this our second U-Haul trip. It's the pandemic. This was April, so we couldn't have anyone help us move or even get a moving company, so we had to do it ourselves. My 18-year-old came in the house and said to me, Mom, you're not going to believe what just happened. He started telling me the story that the police was just at our door. The neighbors called the police to say they saw two suspicious, and whoever, I think the chief could probably correct me. I'm not sure if they said there was two suspicious Black guys at this house and they wanted them to come out, something along those lines. And they came. My husband, when the car pulled up, they were bringing stuff in the house. My husband, because they parked across the street, he had that split second to realize what was happening and was able to compose himself. My 18-year-old's there. And the cop walked up and asked, so they got a call about suspicious guys around this house. He asked him to show his ID. My husband said, no, I don't have to show you that. He asked to show proof that this is our house and that we lived here. My husband refused, but my husband said I could put in the code for the garage to show that we lived here. The officer at the time was okay. And as he was doing that, another car pulled up. So two cars came. And they were satisfied in that and they went back to their cars. Now they were now parked on the street opposite each other, talking to each other. So my husband went over and said to them, you know why you were called? The officer the second officer that came on the scene looked at him and said, I know, we're here discussing it. I will say the officer, they had to come, they did their job. I'm not gonna say they didn't. They weren't rude, they weren't disrespectful. I took it up on myself and I said I was gonna email the chief. At the time, I didn't know we had a new chief, Chief Sweeney. I thought it was still Eric, and I found out after it wasn't. Because I needed you guys to know what we face. I posted my experience on Twitter and a couple of the groups that I'm in. And I got so many direct messages telling me, this happened to me in Markham. This happened to me here. And everyone was sharing their experiences with me. And I thought to myself, I knew it wasn't unique to me. That could have been, there's so many what ifs in that situation, because if my husband had faced a number of microaggression that day, it could have gone a different way. If those officers had a chip on their shoulder or they were jerks, it could have gone a different way. It shouldn't take, and I could say this, it could be the training that is done that made them operate like that, both of them, because one could have been and the other one could have been something else. I could say it was training, but for us, Our lives depend on these phone calls. This was at about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. It was a quiet street in Woodbridge. For us, I remember saying to the chief, you know, whenever as a Black person I hear discretionary, I get nervous because it leaves it to the person and I just think discrimination. To have, when those calls come in, there have to be different type of assessment when those calls come in. It is, I know Shernet mentioned the George Floyd and him calling for his dead mom. It is that fear that I have, and you might hear crackling my voice because I never could say this without thinking it because it's a real fear. I am part of a group with parents that have Black children. And my children didn't have a normal childhood. My children never rode their bikes outside unless I was there. When Trayvon Martin died, I remember my son not knowing, not understanding what happened. He wanted to go to the mall with his friends. And I said, are you nuts? As Black boys, you don't get to go to the mall and hang out. And I had to break it down for him. He was 9 or 10, it was almost 10. I had to break it. And I remember him saying to me, but Mom, this is not fair. And I'm like, I know, but this is my way of protecting you. When he turned 16, he wanted to get his permit. And I was terrified, but I said to myself, I cannot make my fear prevent this kid from living. So we came up with plans. We came up with scenarios that I could protect him when I'm not with him when he's driving. For example, we pray together every time he leaves. He's 18 now. I bless him. I put my hand on his forehead and I blessed him when he leaves my house so that I could protect him when he leaves. I have a 9-year-old. I listen to these stories all the time. And you might say, what happened in the US, it doesn't happen here. It happens here. It is a real fear that we have just for our children to be children. And when I look in this forum right now, the only person that looks like me is Shernet. So how do you know our experiences to plan for our experiences? When you stop us, Shernet mentioned this, we are always going to be nervous. It will take years because it's been years that we've been abused and treated like garbage. I just watched a news report a couple nights ago with a Black couple being assaulted by police officers in Markham. They were senior citizens. I have a brother, my only brother, taking the TTC, and he worked in New York region, but he was coming home, was with his son, and the bus was surrounded by police officer, that someone on the bus had a gun. Him and his son was the only Black guy on the bus. The way they treated him and to search his backpack, he had nothing, he was coming from work. But my brother will be the one, even though he had that bad experience, he will be the first one to defend the police. Because why? When I watched the video of that recent killing of that Black man in Atlanta, my brother had one of those experiences where he was driving under the influence. And when the police pulled him over, he made a lane change and hit a car. The police came, they didn't arrest him. Believe it or not, they didn't. So he always tell this story, but he has both sides. They didn't arrest him. They called my sister to come and get the car. And they took him to the police station, have him sleep it off. I say that to say this. I know it's not all police officers. We know this, but we don't know who we're gonna get when we get into those situations. And the experiences that we have are real. We know by the time the police get involved, it's one of the cases where it's so late. These things start from school. And that's why I am a champion for making changes in our school system. From a kid, my 4-year-old, I got a call. My son was 4, the one that's 9 now, and his kindergarten teacher called me with all these words describing my 4-year-old, and I let her talk. And after I said, "You're telling me my 4-year-old, you used the word bad and all these negative words to describe him." And when I finished explaining to her what she was doing, she started crying. But I was able to do that because I'd already gone through it my oldest, so I was a little bit more experienced in handling that phone call. They tell us they refuse, our kids are starting to refuse and starting to feel away from they're in the schools. So by the time they get to a certain age, when they're finished school, they look around in the corporate world, they don't see themselves. So
Ms. Grant, if I could ask you to please wrap up. We have
I am
2 other
wrapping up.
people waiting.
Thank you. I am wrapping up.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
I'm explaining our experiences from a personal experience as well for parents that I sit on a steering committee that share this. I am here looking to see how we could work together to ease our fears and give our children back their childhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. I can certainly tell that you're in this for the right reason, and your experiences are helpful in the learning curve for us as well. So I thank you. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board? All right, seeing none, I also see that Chair Haxon is now online. Do you want me, Chair, to continue on through the deputations, or would you like to step in at this point? You are totally welcome to do so.
I will let you, I will ask that you continue for the deputations, and I'll pick it up after. I've been on for most of the deputations, so I'm listening and learning as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Ms. Grant. I think our, let's see, our next deputant, and I will ask for a mover and a seconder for all the deputations when we've received all 4. So our next deputant is Don Pratt. So Don, the floor is yours, and you know the routine, the timing we're looking at, and so on. Thank you.
We do, yeah. Thanks very much, Vice Chair. I'm looking at somewhere around 4 to 5 minutes. Good morning to all the members of the Police Services Board, and of course to our good friends at York Regional Police, chief, deputies, and senior officers, and also to the fellow deputants and for those that have sent in submissions. Thank you so much for sharing your voices. My name is Don Pratt. I'm a current member of the York Regional Police Community Advisory Council, as well as past chair, a member of the 3 District Community Liaison Committee, a volunteer supervisor of the Georgina Community Policing Volunteers, and a host of Rogers TV, where we highlight York Regional Police in our community. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity of sharing just some personal views as an engaged member with regards to some of the horrific racial events that have happened of late, and how it's really opened up a lot of our eyes in our community and around the world. I mean, although a lot of these have have come out of the U.S., it's also very prevalent that it's and noticed now that it is in all communities, and obviously there's much more to be done about how it's addressed. I'm not going to speak specifically to the events. There are some other great speakers and submissions that are coming through that can speak far better to that than I can. I more wanted to acknowledge as an active community member, I more wanted to acknowledge how I see York Regional Police and what they're doing with community engagement in our communities. From such things like the Police Community Advisory Council and the District Community Liaison Committees, just to name a couple, their mandates are very clear: to foster harmony and dialogue between York Regional Police and the communities that they serve. And they do that by inviting members of communities from all walks of life into either the headquarters building to speak to the executive command and senior officers, or at the district level through the DCLCs. And this is all reciprocal information where communities get to bring their concerns to the table, as well as police get to share their values and concerns at those same tables. And you know, some of the other actions that I see with York Regional Police is their diversity unit. It's world class. They have a world class leader. They you know, I've heard it referred to as getting ahead of the curve, building those relationships and bridges with communities before they're dealing with issues. And this is paramount in a policing community, in an active community engagement mode. Some of the things that were already mentioned by a couple of previous deputants was Black History Month, the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. These again are worthy to note of how York Regional Police is bringing our communities together from all walks of life. In no way am I trying to offer a comprehensive list of everything that York Regional Police does to engage our community. This is merely a small picture as somebody in the community sees it through their lens, and this is how I see it through mine. You know, some of the other activities that we get to see is the youth education officers, the school resource officers, crime prevention officers, all getting into schools and engaging youth from an early age. And these youth, as they come to school, they're from every walk, race, creed, religion, and they get to have that first interaction with police on a casual, friendly level. They get to learn who their police are. They get to learn what police means to their community. In addition to that, they have the community safety village, and the chief could correct me if I'm wrong on the numbers here, but my understanding is they see somewhere around 10,000 youth per year coming through the community safety village. And now they've got the addition of the human rights classroom. It's you know, just to further those relationships. And again, this is all about building bridges, friendships, relationships in various communities. I know that they've also been, as we've heard previously, that York Regional Police has been heavily entrenched in the race relation committees. You know, and I'm not saying there's not more that can be done. There obviously is, and there always will be. But when I speak to other members of our community, I hear the same thing, that York Regional Police, in most people's views, compared to many other services, is far ahead of the curve in many ways. And again, in no way am I suggesting that there's not more that can be done. Obviously, yes, there is. And I'm sure with the help of some of these fine folks, that help can better come to our community. My ask of this board and the service is there has been, and there still will be, some changes coming in leadership of York Regional Police. York Regional Police, over the years that I've seen it, have created some phenomenal leaders. Stay steadfast on the course that you're on. Maintain the leadership in our diverse community, and use the strength that it offers your organization. And that's my deputation.
Thank you, Mr. Pratt. I have had a request for Ms. Grant's husband to say a few words. Is that correct? You're muted, I think.
Yeah, but he's having problems getting in, so
Okay.
yeah.
So I think, I mean, it's an unusual request, but I think given the gravity of what we're dealing with here today, a few minutes leeway would be appropriate. So, but we'll wait until I see him get logged in here somehow. I'll go on. And are there any questions for Mr. Pratt from members of the board? Chair Emerson.
Yeah, thanks, Vice Chair. And thanks, Mr. Pratt, for your deputant. Just let me get it clear. From the first deputant, Ms. Martin, says they don't want the police in the schools. But if I'm hearing you right, Mr. Pratt, you're saying you feel it's a benefit in some schools that York Regional Police are in there with the amount of work that we do at the safety village with all diversities. And am I hearing that right? And Mr. and Vice Chair, I have to apologize because my internet is unstable. So I'm here, but I'm going to have to take my photo off because they tell me if I don't have my photo on, I will maybe have a better connection because of what's happening, but I'm here. And if you just want to ask me a question anytime, you can check to see if I'm here, but I am here. I'm listening and learning. So Mr. Pratt, could you explain to me, yeah, I think you said that we are doing good work in the school. Ms. Martin says they want us out of the schools. And so I just want to get clarification.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Emerson. And if you've ever had the opportunity of engaging the school officers while they're at work in the schools, I have personally never seen anything but great acceptance from both the youth, the teachers, and any facilitators that are there. And you know, is there more? Are there changes that could come to it that that would make it better? Yeah, I'm sure there are. But I certainly believe in the premise of educating and introducing policing to our youth. You're getting them at an early age. I think that's there's only a benefit to that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
you.
Sorry, if I may, am I
Ms.
allowed to just respond to that?
Ms.
quickly?
Martin, yeah, I did get a request. I don't have the technical package that shows me who has their hands up. So
Oh, okay.
this was not intended to be a back and forth, but
Oh, no, I
again,
just wanted to explain
I think
the
that-
issue about the police and schools.
Yes,
But
please
that's
go
okay.
ahead.
Oh, thank you. And I do agree with you. I know some great community officers that are in schools. Our job at VACA is when we're called into these high schools, usually they're high schools, we go in and sometimes we do see police interacting with students. And so I know that it's not the same sort of mandate that Toronto had years ago. But what we've seen sometimes is that it's difficult to explain when you're not a Black student who sees police and you all of a sudden feel the trauma. It comes back to the trauma. I've been in Vaughan Secondary School where police were called in because a young girl was wearing very short shorts and a crop top, and police were called in and it was a female officer and a male officer were there, but the female officer took the child, the teenager aside and was talking to her. And I just happened to show up on that day to talk about something else with the school and overheard the conversation. I stopped. The female officer and I spoke together and I thought there must be a better way to have somebody else talk to a student about her dress than calling police, right? So there are instances where I don't think police need to be called into schools, certainly for the safety village and talking about cyberbullying and, you know, safety with strangers and all those things are very important. But I think if some budget went into guidance counselors or more counselors on school site that could deal with that than taking police from what they should be doing to just come and talk about how somebody's dressed. And like I said, I think it's very traumatic for Black students to see police in the place where they go to school. And when you talk about you get them from an early age, to us, what that means is it's like a school to prison pipeline. Early age for what? How do you get them? We parent our kids. Teachers teach our kids. We don't need police to get them at no early age. We don't want to see that. And so again, we say, if you don't have Black people on these decision-making committees, and if you don't have us giving you guys this sort of advice and real stories like Charlene shared with you, what you think is good, we don't think is good. And you need to hear from us that we're telling you that it's traumatic for kids. They don't need to see police when they're 4 years old. They don't need to see that. We actually don't want our kids to ever have to intervene with police. We don't want the interaction with police. It's my job as a parent to never have my son or daughter ever interact with police because that's a fearful thing for us. It's better they live their life and never have to be stopped by police, have to be talked to by police, because again, it's not only trauma, but it could go sideways depending on who the officer is, on what day, what could happen, what could evolve. We'd rather have no interaction. And not because they're not great people, they are, but just not in our schools.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's it, Chair. Thank you.
Your view on that. Are there any further questions for Mr. Pratt? All right, seeing none, our next deputant is Ms. Nanda Kumar, and if you turn your video is off as well, Ms. Nanda Kumar.
Hold on. I'm just trying to get it on. Can
Okay.
you hear me?
There you go. All right.
Good morning, everyone. I have a bunch of ideas, but I think I'm just going to narrow it down because Sharnette and Charlene both touched on every single point that I really wanted to talk about as well. But I really do want to thank Sharnette and Charlene for talking about their lived experience of not only them, their families, their children, but like just overall community and how the Black community is faces marginalization today. And as a member of the Tamil diaspora, I know that as a visible minority, I have faced racial discrimination, but my experience as a member of the Tamil diaspora will always be different than my Black friends. And I've seen this happen every single time, no matter what sector it is, whether you're in the workplace, whether you're in the school system, even outside in your neighborhood, how I get treated is always different than my Black friends. And my reason for coming, coming on Zoom live today really is based off of, it's not only the incident with George Floyd, his death, but it also has to do with the protest that took place this past Saturday in the city of Markham. And it was organized by a young Black leaders, high school kids who got together and organized a protest in light of everything that's happening in the US and even here in Toronto. And it really motivated me, but it also hit me in the head that, hey, there's still racism going on in the same school that I went to 15 years ago. And she is a young Black woman, and she's talking about how it's not only the police policing these kids, it's also the teachers policing you, the principals, the teachers union policing teachers of color, people of color. And, I really do, I acknowledge what Sharnette and Charlene kept bringing up, that when you have hiring taking place in different sectors, especially in the police force or on the board when you're appointed, you need to see representation. That's the only way we're really gonna have change happen, because your lived experience is not the same as your neighbors. And I'm a visible minority, Sharnette's a visible minority, Charlene's a visible minority. Those two women might be Black. We might have shared experiences of racism, but each one is different. The Black woman is viewed as different than the Indian or Sri Lankan woman. And this is what some people don't see. They like to group all these communities together. And I see the privilege that I have. I've never been racially profiled. I've never been racially profiled. My Black friends, specifically my Black guy friends, have they been racially profiled? Of course they have, in many different instances. And I also lived in the Jane and Finch community while I was studying at York in undergrad. And I used to see it all the time. And I do agree that Toronto, the amount of racism or racial profiling in Toronto is different and might be more than York region. I've seen it based off of like the same friends coming to York region and hanging out in public spaces. It might be less, but we do have to acknowledge that does happen and it can go underreported. And this is why we have been talking about the importance of race-based data and why it's important to collect this type of data so that we can have the transparency and accountability with the police force, and we can monitor systemic discrimination. So this is pretty much Charlene and Sharnette, like they touched on all the points. I really do want to emphasize that the police force needs anti-Black racism training. I'm not sure what type of training the police force is getting right now. Anti-racism training is more of a broad term. Anti-Black racism, anti-Asian racism, specific to the communities is a must, because everyone's experience of racism, every visible minority's experience of racism is always going to be different. And, again, like I think, I'm not sure if Sharnette or Charlene brought it up with training for trauma and phone calls. Like it's necessary, because the police force, anyone who works in with the law, they need to know how to interact with these communities. And sometimes I find that especially when you're a visible minority and there's also other issues of mental health and coming from a low income household, you really need to understand that this is a very special circumstance, and you need to take action very cautiously. So, these are the points that I had, and I just wanted to, thank again everyone for listening. And Sharnette and Charlene, they are members of the Black community. and I support you on what you've said so far today. And I know this because my friends from the Black community, they're not doing that great right now with everything that's going on, with everything that's posted on social media, the constant killing of unarmed Black men. And I don't know, I don't know how, moving forward, we got to work together. I don't think we're in a position to, put up walls and not work together, but we know we have to work together with the police, and hopefully we can see more diversity on the board and in the frontline officers. Like at the protest, I saw so many Black officers that I don't see on a regular basis when I'm driving my car or hanging out with my friends in Markham or anywhere in York Region. I never see them, but I saw them at the protest, and it actually made me comfortable and my friends comfortable, that because I come from a community that comes from a country that does not trust the state. We don't trust the police because of our civil war, because of being marginalized and violently oppressed. And when I saw the police officers out at that protest supporting BLM, it felt more comfortable. It felt like, hey, they're part of the community. They're listening. They're right there. There's no fear. And especially for my Black colleagues and my Black friends who, anyone from the Black community who was there, they felt comfortable. So this is, again, this is what Charlene and Charnette are expressing. Like, we need to see it in the task force. We need to see it in the police force and the board as well. So this is why hiring practices need to be more inclusive. And that's all I had to say. Thank you for listening, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Nandakumar. Does anyone have any questions? Any member of the board have any questions? Okay, seeing none. And Ms. Grant, I don't see your husband online, so we will have to move forward, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
Can I have a motion to accept the 4 deputations? Mayor Bevilacqua, seconded by Josh Cooper. All those in favor? That's carried. Now, Chair Haxon is online with us, so I will at this point turn the meeting back over to her. I know, Chair Haxon, that you had some comments that you wanted to make at the beginning of the meeting, and I did explain that those comments would be coming once you came online, so you may wish to start there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I first wanted to say how appreciative that I am and we are for the presentations this morning, the deputations. I picked up just as the first deputant started, and I thought that every one of you were thoughtful, detailed in your feelings and your thoughts, and thank you so much for sharing them with us, because as we all know, we have to do this together, and your sharing of your experiences has made it, for me, I can't speak for the other board members, but I suggest a better understanding of where you are at this stage. So I want to thank you very much for that. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit right at the beginning, and I apologize. When you live in the country, sometimes the internet isn't as good as it should be. And of course, probably one of the most important days for me, and I was late, so I do apologize. This discussion today is only the beginning. We are committed as a board to ensuring that anti-Black racism and other forms of racism, including systemic racism, are not tolerated or ignored. And the board, along with the chief, are committed to working with our community partners, our Black community leaders, to finding solutions. York Regional Police and our many diverse and racialized communities have done tremendous work together over the last 20 years to build strong partnerships and to be leaders in community policing and providing fair and equitable police responses to our communities. But we are listening, and we have heard that much more needs to be done. And we are here to work with you. This is just the beginning. Thank you very much for taking your time to come out. I do appreciate it. And with that, we have an agenda that I will continue along with. Thank you, Vice Chair Molyneux. Appreciate your stepping in very short notice. I'm wondering if we would like to have a quick break at this point and then maybe about 10 minutes come back to our meeting. Am I seeing any interest in that, or will we just carry on? Mr. Molyneux, you have seen the go ahead.
Mayor Bevilacqua had a comment.
Yes, Madam Chair, if I may, I'd like to move that your comments, your introductory comments, be received, and that the minutes also incorporate your entire statement that you made on this particular issue. I deem it to be extremely important, so I'd like to move that.
Thank you very much. And could I ask to raise your hands, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much, Mayor Bevilacqua. Appreciate that. Is there an appetite to take a break, or will we just move along? 10 minutes? Okay, so we'll take a 10-minute break and then be back to the remainder of our agenda, of which I know we have 16 pieces of correspondence regarding this topic that will be received. They won't be read out, but they will be received. Okay, thank you. We'll take 10 minutes. I'm looking, we'll be back at 10:15. Thank you very much. Good morning. I'm looking at our clock and it is 10:15. So I am hoping to start our meeting, reinstate our meeting shortly. Okay, we'll get started then. Welcome to everyone. My deepest apologies of all the days that I could have missed. Today was not the day to do so, and I do apologize, but I do thank Vice Chair Molyneux very much for stepping in very short notice on, as I said, one of probably the most important meetings that we've had in quite some time. We are now under communications. We have 16 communications that have been sent to us. And my suggestion would be that we would receive them all collectively. However, in our minutes, they could be identified individually. And that way, those people that have taken the time to send us a correspondence, that it is noted within our minutes that they have done so. With that, I'm wondering if I could have a mover and a seconder. I'm going to go through each one, just but we'll collectively, if that's all right with everyone. The first one is Kandil Imaran. Second one is Rehan Sumar. The third one is Sherette Martin. The fourth one is Gary Thompson. The fifth one is Pat Howell. The sixth one is Lee Miller. The seventh one is Yvonne Kelly. The eighth one is Maggie Quirt. The ninth one is Claire Rice. The 10th one is Russ and Jennifer Coles. The 11th one is Holly Douglas. The 12th one is Ashley Arkeveld. The 13th one is Rabina Rice. The 14th one is Amy Cooper. The 15th one is Neil Tasham. And the 16th one we have is Jennifer Alloy. With that, could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Mayor Bevilacqua, seconded by Vice Chair Molyneux. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Item 7.0 is reports from the chief. And the first one we have is our financials and the audit of the 2019. Chief, would you have comments on this item?
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the board. And I believe we have some members still on with us. So good morning, everyone. I will turn this report over briefly to Jeff Channel, Manager of Financial Services.
Thank you, Chief, and good morning to the board and to the deputants. So this report is a follow-up to the March report where we reported on the December 31st, 2019 financial statements. This is the outcome of an audit that was received by York Region on June the 10th. And it includes one adjustment. So the adjustment was to a revenue item, and it reduced revenues related to development charges and how it's funded into the operating budget by $108,000. That reduced the 29 operating surplus to $180,787. Effectively, we spent 100% of the budget in 2019. And with that, I'll take any questions that the board might have.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from board members? Ms. Fang, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Virginia. Thank you, Jeff. Just a quick question, please. The adjustment, is it as a result of accounting methodology adjustment or something else?
Thank you, Ms. Fang. And through you, Chair, the adjustment is actually from the Treasury Office. They centrally manage these entries on behalf of YRP. So that was done in late March, and it was actually not an effect of the actual audit itself. The audit itself had no adjusting entries. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, Ms. Fang, would you move this for us, please?
Yes.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder? Mr. Cooper, thank you very much. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. The next item is donation of found or abandoned bicycles. And this is a.
I'll move it, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And seconder, please. Mayor Bevilacqua, all those in favor, and that's carried. Item 7.3 is our 2019 annual report. Questions, comments? Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Mayor Bevilacqua, Ms. Fang, all those in favor, and that's carried. Item 7.4 is our 2019 York Region Transit Annual Report. Are there questions on this? I'm not seeing any.
I'll move it. I'll move it.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Purcell, second that motion. Thank you very much.
Yes.
All those in favor, and that's carried. I'm at item 8, and that's unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business at this time? I'm not seeing any. Do we have any other business? I'm not seeing any. And with that, could I have a motion to move to private session, please? Moved by Chair Emerson, seconded by Vice Chair Molyneux. All those in favor? And that's carried. We'll take a moment or two. I know our IT need a couple of moments to move into private session, so we'll take a couple of moments to do so.
Okay.